Now, there are still some nations in the world where they're not moving or acting fast enough for security. What do you think the landscape will look like in the next 10 to 15 years if governments don't act fast enough to align their policies with tech and supporting these companies?
Well, I would like to point something that we haven't talked about. We're talking about production. One of the biggest problems we have is food losses and food waste. That's a huge impact. 1/3 of all the food we produce is not arriving to any consumer at all. And this is where our company, Essence Food, where we focus, is targeting through data, why is the food not arriving to the consumer? Is it in the farmer the problem? Is it in the distribution? And we collect these main streams of food and we transform it into powder food. By doing that, the same size that you used to ship 8 containers of food, now you can fit it in 2 with much more precise nutrition. So you can imagine reducing the volume of kiwis or strawberries into powder formats where all the nutrition is compact. And those were previously food losses that were not arriving to any consumer, so they were already a problem for the environment. All the resources we put of water, energy, farming, and then it doesn't arrive anywhere, but it also creates methane into the atmosphere. So we started to create this pilot project. We started in the north region of Spain, where we recover all these waste streams of fruit and vegetables, and we give it a second life, upcycling food. When we have this digital library of ingredients, it's very efficient for us to mix the different powder results and get some powder insect, for example, and get some algae and make a very small biscuit, which we like to call it a smart biscuit, that can arrive to every school in third world countries and give what the kids need to learn in school. So the vision is about being more efficient in terms of not wasting anything. I think the word waste is something from the past. I think we've learned very fast recently that there's nothing to waste, that everything can be recycled, or in this case, upcycled. And the meaning of upcycle, it means that the final product is now valuing more than in its original format. And if you can imagine that all these foods are freeze-dried, it means we have a huge amount of water saved. So for regions like Saudi Arabia or all this part of the world, the Middle East, water is a very needed resource. So if you can imagine that from one side we extract the water of food that was about to be wasted, and on the other side we can feed vertical farming with that water. So we're closing a big loop. And on top of it, you have the bioproducts like the bones of the fruits or the skins of the fruits that in some ways can be replacing our plastics. So you can use that for packaging of the same food. And I believe that in the near future, this will be the biggest impact we can create, is not wasting and upcycling all the streams we have of food so they arrive where they need to with less cost, more effective, and above all, finishing world hunger or at least contribute to it in a way that is more nutritious, not just sending you a bag of rice, but sending you a bag of rice with 3 grams of powder to add to that rice that will make your nutrition boost in all levels.
Bina, I see we're out of time, but I want to cover this with a macroeconomic argument. We have more people, right? Rising population, climate change rendering traditional ag less efficient, and water is food and food is life. And we don't have more water. In fact, water security is a major issue, including in the exporting nations of the world's food. And most of us focus on fruit and veg, right? That's water. And so China, water issues, huge discussions. America, water issues. These exporting nations will not be able to serve your food needs, and so you need to serve them yourself. And you know this, but I gave a speech at the Wharton Social Impact Investor Conference called Peace in the Middle East Through Tomatoes. And I use that just to fill the room, but the argument I made is that right now we're still 80% import dependent in this region. Saudi's a little less so. But declining water, fast-growing populations, and we export our oil wealth and import dollars, and we use those dollars both to buy goods, but also to fix our currency. If ever post-peak oil demand, we don't have that peg, the currency devalues, food prices rise. You've seen it in Lebanon right now. You've seen it all over the world. That is how you get a food crisis. And I think that if governments don't play a role, which they are right now, I want to highlight they're being great, but if they don't continue to play a role globally in solving this challenge, in supporting technology and more efficient food production on both the supply side and then demand issues on waste and other, we have a food crisis coming, right? But it's completely avoidable if governments act now. And I think that that's part of what this dialogue's about. But I think that's the world if the government doesn't get involved in supporting food security.
Yes. Great. We have half a minute more. Mohammed, if you want to add something.
Yeah, just I think when going back to your point about technology and food tech, there's this conception that there's a fear to embrace technology in food production, but the reality is technology has always been used in every era, right? Like high tech 50 years ago was new water irrigation systems. Today we happen to have IoT, we happen to have artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, all these kinds of things. My own company, we've raised $150 million to farm crickets indoors, right? And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but if you think about how long it took, and this is just one example and I'll conclude here, the poultry industry took 50 years, 50, to take a chicken and in 57 days increase its weight by 4 times. So in the 1950s, an average chicken weighed about 1.5 kilos, and a number of years later, about 50 years later, it was about under 1 kilo, and it became about 4 kilos. In 5 years, with a fraction of that amount of investment, we've increased our productivity by 20 times. And our factory that we're building now in Canada will produce 1,000 times more protein per acre than any equivalent form of livestock. So technology has the power to massively accelerate our agricultural productivity, and rather than fear it or see it as something that is threatening, we have to embrace it. But the proof point, and this is up to all entrepreneurs to really prove, is that the technology works. Because unlike other sectors, in agriculture, you don't move fast and break things, because this is food and it's people's livelihoods.
Great, excellent, thank you. Thank you to each one of you for coming out here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.